What's up YouTube? Chris Bandy here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do a backflip. The only things you'll need are a trampoline and a bunch of pillows. If you want this tutorial to work for you, please watch the entire video before you start to train. I cannot be responsible if you get hurt, but I still don't want you to get hurt, and there's a lot of information that you need to have before you start training for this trick. Also, if you're not 100% sure on how to warm up or get in shape for the backflip, click the link in the description and watch that video as well before you start to train. If you already know how to do a backflip on the trampoline, still watch this entire video because it will show you how to improve your form and stay safe. Form doesn't really matter on a trampoline because you can compensate for bad form by adding height or putting in extra effort. But form is crucial when you're trying to backflip on flat ground for the first time. The motions are not difficult, but it is extremely important that you do them correctly and confidently. So let's get started. Step 1. Foot bounce. Stand up straight with your arms out in front of you. The safest place to stand for all of these steps is between the center and the edge of the trampoline, with your back facing the center. Bend down about halfway and swing your arms back until they are pointed backwards. Go as far as you're comfortable, but don't hold them in that position. Instead, immediately slingshot your arms forward until they are straight up, and then spring up from the trampoline. Do not lean back. Instead, jump straight up. Do not bend all the way down into a crouch. You can't get much power from a low position. So instead, go down about halfway. Do not move your head back. You can obviously look down when you bend down, but when you jump, keep your gaze fixed forward. I know this looks super easy, but do about 10 of these before moving on to step 2. Make sure you're not staggering around or having to put your hands down. Instead, do it until you can solidly land and stay standing. Step 2. Knee bounce. Use the exact same launching motion as last time, but now, when you get in the air, bend your knees to about a 90-degree angle and drop down onto your knees and lower legs. Make sure you jump high enough and control your bounce so that you can make it back up to your feet on the next bounce. Remember, everything is the same as last time. The only difference is that you're landing on your knees instead of on your feet. Make sure you're super comfortable with this. Don't be falling over or bouncing out of control every other time you try it. Step 3. Bottom bounce. Use the exact same motion as last time, but now bend at the knees and at the hips so that you drop down to your bottom. You can do this with your legs either out in front of you or crisscrossed. Again, make sure you make it back up to your feet on the next bounce, and don't move on until you're super comfortable with this. As you work your way up these steps, don't be afraid to take a break. It takes time for these new movements to settle in, so don't rush it or feel like you have to get all of these steps in one day. If you have any sort of muscle pain that happens 3 or more bounces in a row, stop immediately and stretch that muscle out. Again, you should have already watched my video about warming up. If stretching doesn't work, or you have a different type of continuing pain, take the day off. Remember my progression video? It might look like all 12 attempts were in the same day, but I actually had to take 11 days off between attempts 3 and 4 because of stomach pain. It sucks, but it is always better to stop and let it heal instead of getting yourself more injured. Be patient and stay safe. Step 4. Back bounce. Use the exact same motion as last time, but now, when you swing your arms up, go a little farther so that they are pointed slightly back. It's okay if they bend slightly. Once you launch, lift your legs up a little bit. This will make you tilt backwards and land on your back. Again, make sure you make it back up to your feet. If you notice, I'm not forcing myself onto my back. I'm not throwing my head back or jerking backwards. The only thing that's making me rotate backwards is the swinging motion of my arms and the slight lifting of my legs. This is the first step where it might feel like you're losing control. That's good, because you're starting to learn that you can indeed lose control for a short time and still be okay. Don't try to force it to happen. Just swing your arms and lift your legs, and let the momentum do the work. Get super comfortable with the back bounce before you move on. Step 5. Back roll. Lay on your back, roll your legs up really hard, grab your legs, and tuck into a ball. Do it quickly enough so that you start to roll back onto your neck a little bit. After doing this a few times, try doing it hard enough so that you roll all the way back and you can stand up on your feet. This isn't super necessary, and if it hurts your neck or head, don't do it a whole bunch. But you should try it at least a couple times and see if you can rotate all the way back and stand up. Step 6. Back bounce follow. This step is literally just a combination of the previous 2 steps. Do a back bounce, and immediately after you land on your back, do a back roll. Since you're bouncing, the roll part will just happen in the air, which actually makes it easier because you don't have to roll over your neck anymore. If you're afraid of landing on your head, I promise you won't if you tuck correctly. Take a look. My head is directly over the trampoline, only from here to here. You can get through this small range really easily by just tucking. Just trust that if you tuck, you'll make it past that small range no matter what. Because the rotation is so fast for this trick, it's pretty easy to actually overdo it and stumble backwards. This is why it's super important for your trampoline to have a net. Do not crouch forward. The momentum is going to come from your hips and your legs. So you need to instead roll your legs backwards to get the rotation. If for some reason you don't get enough rotation, you can recover by either throwing your hands down to break your fall, or quickly twisting so that you land on your shoulder or side instead of your head. This move is really not that dangerous. You're falling onto a trampoline from like 1 foot in the air, but you still need to be super careful and ready to react if you're about to hit your head. It's not necessary to land flat on your back. I found it easier to land closer to my bottom. The important part is that you tuck into a ball and make it back up to your feet. Since this is the first step where you're going over your head, it's probably a good bit scarier than all of the previous steps. Even if you're uncomfortable with it, still try it. Being nervous is different than being uncertain. If you're uncertain how you're going to react when you start rotating backwards, you're not ready to try this move. Never try any move where you're not sure you're going to commit. Commit means you actually tuck and stay tucked until right before you land. One problem you might have is that you bounce on your back, pull your legs in, and it just doesn't work. You either don't rotate back at all, or you rotate halfway, and you have to stick your hands down so you don't land on your head. That's because you're not supposed to pull your legs in. You're supposed to roll your legs and your hips up and back toward your head. It's not a straight motion, it's a circular motion. If this still doesn't work, try jumping, curling your legs a little bit, then landing on your back and immediately thrusting your legs back toward your head. If you still aren't getting the rotation you need, try taking a few bounces first, instead of jumping from a standing position. Remember to swing your arms up and back on that last bounce. Another problem is you keep rotating to the side instead of straight back. This is where you might need to return to the back roll for a little bit, and try that until you can nail it and go straight back without going to the side. If this is a fear issue, again, you need to trust that good technique will carry you through. If it's not a fear issue, try moving as symmetrically as possible, or even try to rotate a little bit to the other side to compensate. This issue might also happen if the ground that your trampoline's on is sloped. If this is the case, try doing this move straight down the slope or up the slope, so that there's no sort of side slope that will throw you off course. You need to be in complete control of this step before moving on to the next one. See if you can do it perfectly at least 5 times in a row before moving on to the next step. Step 7. 5 bounce backflip. This is the exact same thing as the previous step, except that the tuck happens 1 step sooner. All of the 6 previous steps come into play with this step. Stand up straight and start bouncing. After the 3rd bounce, swing your arms forward. After the 4th bounce, swing your arms back as far as it's comfortable. When you land for the 5th bounce, bend down about halfway. When you launch, immediately swing your arms up and back. Once you're in the air, roll your legs up hard, tuck into a ball, and grab your legs. Stay in a ball until right before you land. If you do this correctly, you will easily make it past any position where you could land on your head. This is an extremely important and somewhat difficult step, so I'm going to give you 4 tips to help you get your form perfect. 1. Launch straight up. Do not lean backwards. Do not jump backwards. Do not throw your head back. All of these moves will kill your height. Stand straight up and jump straight up. Don't even lean your head back. Keep your gaze locked straight ahead as you're jumping up. Again, the momentum doesn't come from throwing your chest back. It comes from rolling your hips and legs up. Lots of people like to work up to this by flipping slightly to the side, which is less scary. If you want to try that, go ahead. But you've already mastered rotating straight back because you've done the back bounce follow. And this is exactly the same, except that the tuck happens earlier. I can guarantee if you push aside your fears, launch straight up, swing your arms up and back, tuck tight, and hold the tuck, you will land safely and your fear will be gone. You only have to do it once, and then your fear will be greatly diminished and perhaps gone completely. 2. Jump high. Actually jump up into the air. Don't let the trampoline do all the work for you. One mistake I used to make a lot is that I would bounce a couple times, but on the last bounce, I would soften my knees, which kills the bounce. And then I would just sort of throw myself backwards instead of actually jumping. Jumping higher is scarier, but it's actually safer to an extent. Don't jump as high as you can. Go for about 50% of your power. Once you get past the fear, you can start to adjust the amount of jump to the perfect amount for you. Remember though, you need to put effort into the last bounce. When you start flipping on the ground, it's not going to give you any bounce at all. So, if you're landing backflips on the trampoline just because you're tucking super hard with no height, that's not going to cut it on the ground. Put some effort into that last bounce. 3. Tuck once you're in the air. Don't try to tuck as you're jumping. This will kill your height by throwing you backwards instead of upwards. Just wait until you're in the air before you tuck. If you tuck pretty soon, you'll rotate enough to probably land on your knees. That's perfect if it's your first couple times doing it, because your goal right now is just to get over the fear of going backwards. Physically, it's actually easier on this step than on the previous step to not land on your head, because you have more height now than when you were having to bounce off of your back. Once you get comfortable with the tuck, and still need to add more height, start tucking a little later each jump. The goal is to work your way back until the tuck is right before the peak of your jump. 4. Stay tucked. Lots of times, people who are brave enough to begin the tuck will bail once they feel themselves start to rotate backwards. This is understandable because it's pretty scary. When you're upside down for the first time, you don't have much control over your body, and your reflex will be to open your limbs back up and try to regain control. Backflipping is dangerous, but so is driving. If you commit to getting on the highway, and the car in front of you suddenly stops, are you going to slam on the gas pedal because you're scared? No, that would be stupid. Committing to a backflip, but then opening up in midair is like slamming on the gas pedal and ramming into the car in front of you. You can't control whether you get scared, but you can control how you react. Opening up in midair is a terrible reflex, but unfortunately, that's the one that most people do. This is what makes backflipping so dangerous. To be safe, you need to train your reflex to instead be to tuck harder. So, if you start to do a backflip and you get scared, instead of spreading out, tuck harder. If you're scared that tucking harder will cause you to over-rotate and land on your head, I don't think you need to have that fear. If you don't already know how to do a backflip, it's almost impossible to over-rotate so much that you actually land on your head. One trainer told me to spot the ground and open up when I see it. If this works for you, definitely use it, but for whatever reason, it hasn't helped me. When I'm flipping through the air, I just can't think about or pay attention to anything. For me, it's a lot easier to just rely on muscle memory to open up at the right time. Once you've gotten over the fear of going backwards on the trampoline, I think it's perfectly okay to fine-tune your rotation using trial and error. When you commit for the first time, you'll probably land on your knees, and like I said, the fear should go away. So after that, You can try it again as many times as you want until you start landing on your feet. Trial and error is all about finding the perfect amount of rotation so that you land solidly on your feet. If you find yourself landing on your stomach, your knees, or having to stick your hands forward so that you don't face plant, that means your rotation is not enough. You can increase your rotation by doing one of three things: tucking harder, jumping higher, or opening up later. Pick whichever one of those you feel weakest about and work on that to increase your rotation. If you find yourself landing on your back, or even landing with your feet forward so that you fall backwards, that means your rotation is too much. If this happens once or twice, it's okay. Just try again. But if it starts to happen every single time, you can decrease your rotation by lightening up on one of those three areas I just mentioned. But be careful. Lightening up on the tuck does not mean loosening up on the tuck position. You're still going to tuck into a tight ball. Lightening up on the tuck simply means that you don't put quite as much effort into getting to the tuck. This step is almost definitely the hardest step for everyone. You're worried that you'll land on your head, break your neck, and be paralyzed for life. That's a possibility if you don't tuck. That's the thing. If you tuck, you'll be fine. When you're in the air, you have almost no control over your body, so you have to trust that the tuck will carry you through. Remember how, in the back bounce follow, it's a little scary when you feel yourself start to rotate backwards, but it still works out? It's the same thing here. You don't have to do it perfectly as long as the fundamentals are there. If you tuck and stay tucked, you'll land safely. Make sure to pay attention to what I've said about form, to all the info in this section, and make sure especially that you're 100% solid on all of the previous steps. I know exactly how it is to watch a bunch of tutorials and feel all confident, but then when you get out there to the trampoline and you're about to do it, you just can't get yourself to flip backwards. So simplify. Just think, launch and tuck. Don't actively think about all the little details. You've already practiced them and you already know them. Just think, launch and tuck. If you launch, tuck, and stay tucked, you'll land safely and your fear will be gone. When you finally do it, it feels like unlocking a new skill. It's a pretty awesome feeling. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not telling you to just go for it and hope that it works out. That is a terrible idea, and that's how a lot of people get seriously hurt. They just ignore their fears and try it with no sort of training, preparation, or technique. It is super important that you are solid on all the previous steps. The most important thing is that you tuck and stay tucked. If you are confident that you're going to launch high, tuck hard, and stay tucked, then yes, go for it. Also, I am not telling you to stay away from a gym or a spotter. If you have those resources available and you'd like to use them, I encourage you to do so. It's a great way to get over fear if nothing else works. Based on my experience, I don't think they're necessary to learn the backflip, but they are a huge help for some people, and there's nothing wrong with being on the safe side. Step 8. Reduced bounce backflip. This step is actually a progression of steps. It is exactly the same as the previous step, but with fewer preparation bounces. Start by removing one bounce from the previous step, so that you bounce only 3 times and launch on the 4th. That means, starting from the launch, your arms will go down, down, forward, back, up. Once you're completely comfortable with this, remove another bounce and launch on the 3rd bounce. Now your arms go down, forward, back, up. Now launch on the 2nd. Forward, back, up. Then just jump up and launch on the 1st bounce. The motion here might need to be slightly different. When you jump, swing your arms up, loop them back down, then swing them up again for the launch. As you continue to take away bounces, you'll probably have to refine your form just a little bit more each time. That's a good thing because it prepares you for the next step. Step 9. Standing backflip on trampoline. This is exactly the same as the previous step, but with no preparation bounce. Your motion is exactly the same. Literally, the only thing that's different is that you'll have to jump harder and tuck harder. When you bend down, obviously you'll dig down into the trampoline a little bit, and that's totally fine. This is where it might help to create a ritual. A ritual is a series of movements that prepares your brain for what you're about to do. It helps with the fear, and also keeps you from shuffling around and stalling because you're too afraid to go for it. What I do is look down, place my right foot, place my left foot, look up, exhale, raise my arms straight in front of me, and then do the backflip. If you can make this ritual part of the muscle memory of the flip, then you can basically force yourself to do it, because once you start the ritual, there's no backing out until the entire flip is finished. Now, don't move on after like 5 standing backflips on the trampoline. In my opinion, you should spend at least a couple days getting comfortable with standing backflips on the trampoline before you move to the pillows. Again, if you get hurt, make sure to rest. It's better to be patient with your body instead of overworking it and getting yourself injured. Step 10. Standing backflip on pillows. This is exactly the same as the previous step. Everything you're doing is the same. The only difference is what you're standing on. To stay safe and reduce your fears, I would suggest 3 things. 1. Overload on pillows. Stack enough pillows that you can land on your knees without any pain or hard impact. Make sure to test this out so that you're 100% okay with landing on your knees. It's best to have at least 3 thick pillows for the landing and 2 pillows for your head if you over-rotate and fall backwards. If it helps to reduce your fears, also use a thin pillow for your launch pad. But get rid of that once you're comfortable, because it's actually physically easier to just jump off of the flat ground. 2. Wear good shoes and tie them tightly. One of the risks of flipping barefoot is landing on your toe and bending it super hard, so make sure to wear shoes. 3. Get someone to watch. Before each attempt, ask them if they're ready, and after each attempt, make sure they ask you if you're okay. If you're trying a standing backflip on pillows for the first time, make sure that you've stretched and warmed up with at least 5 standing backflips on the trampoline in the last 30 minutes. The fear is greatly reduced if you've got that muscle memory of the exact motion that you're going to be doing. There's going to be fear, but do everything you possibly can to reduce it. Wear comfortable, stretchy clothes. Do it in an open space. Film it with a camera. It's also important to film so that you can analyze your mistakes later on. When you go for it, just do what you've already done dozens of times. It's literally the same thing. There's nothing new that you need to think about. Stay tucked, and the worst that can happen is you land on your knees, which you already know doesn't hurt because you've already tested out the pillows. Once you're comfortable with that, start progressing down. Just like on the trampoline, when you took away 1 bounce at a time. On the ground, take away 1 pillow at a time. Do it in the order that seems most comfortable. I would suggest taking away your launch pillow first, while keeping all the landing pillows. This will help you get used to launching off of the grass, but you'll know that the landing is exactly the same. Just take away 1 pillow at a time until you have none left. Then, just do a standing backflip on flat ground. When you get over the fear, that is excellent, and you'll know it. But that doesn't mean you'll never get hurt after that point. It might actually become more dangerous because you'll be tempted to try it in public before you're completely comfortable with it. What will keep you from getting hurt is warming up, using correct form, and stopping if you have any pain. Be just as careful with the form as you were when you were first trying it. When you finally land a backflip on flat ground, do not go out the next day and try it first thing, even if you have no fears. Do all the stretches and warm up on the trampoline with at least some backflips and standing backflips before you try it again on the ground. Wait at least a week before trying to backflip on flat ground without first stretching and warming up on the trampoline. I don't think you'll need to warm up with the pillows anymore, but if you feel like you need to, definitely do that as well. A couple days ago, I warmed up on the trampoline and then did 5 backflips on the ground. About 4 hours later, I wanted to show off to a little kid, so I tried to do a backflip, but ended up basically falling flat on my stomach. Fortunately, I was okay, but I realized it would be a couple more days before I could start trying to flip without warming up right before. Okay, that's it for this tutorial. My goal is to actually help people, not just to make a video. So if this has helped you, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to my channel, and post a video to your channel of you doing a backflip, and I will check it out. If you get stuck on one of the 10 steps for more than 3 days, comment what that step is. If at least 10 people comment about a single step, I will make a follow-up video on that particular step. Good luck and stay safe.